the YouTube screen?
Either one is fine.
All right.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to get us started. From the spooky land near Salem, Mass, to you listening around the world, this, my ghouls and guides, is Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host and Spaced Out Radio's resident witch, Lynn Wallington, coming to you live from my broomsticks. So grab a seat, keep your arms and legs on the broom at all times, and come along with me as we fly into tonight's adventure. We welcome you to tonight's show on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they're free at youtube.com/spacedoutradio. Just do us the favor and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and my personal handle at Witchy Linny, Witchy with a Y, Linny with an I-E. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show and at Witchy Linny. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, read up on the SOR Newswire, and so much more. And if you're in the mood for some paranormal stories combined with utter ridiculousness, you can also find me and my co-host Caitlin on YouTube at Paranormal Spirits. Just use the search filter for channels, otherwise every paranormal episode of anything will come up. And if you enjoy Emily's drinking game on the YouTube channel and want to play here tonight, please feel free. For those of you who aren't familiar, the game is simple. Anytime I screw up a word or phrase, you take a drink. I myself need to stay coherent, but I will definitely provide plenty of opportunities for you to drink. It's Saturday night, and here on Spaced Out Saturday, that means it is cocktail time. And for tonight's Witch's Brew, I'm enjoying a Pim's Cup, which is a delicious drink. If you've never had it, look it up. So grab yourself a drink, sit back, and let's have a fun night together. Tonight, we'll be talking about Salem, Mass with Dr. Mike Vitka. Dr. Vitka is your ultimate guide to Salem's dark secrets. He's a Salem local, a professional paranormal investigator, a passionate Salem historian, and a true entertainer. As a longtime Salem resident, Dr. Vitka knows the hidden insider information about the haunted seaport town and will even reveal to you the controversial location of the Forbidden Gallows Hill witch hanging site. Dr. Vitka is the Salem tour guide who is not afraid to tell you the truth about Salem's ghastly past and sinister present. Then in the bottom of hour number 2, I'll bring you some tidbits of the weird, wacky, and interesting today in history. All right. Well, hello, Mike. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. I didn't realize there was a drinking game. Perhaps at some point, if you go to an ad or something, maybe I'll go get myself a little something to mix with.
We don't, unfortunately, go to an ad, but that's okay. You can always play again the next time.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, it was a great day in Salem today. It was almost like an October day. It was very, very busy out there.
It looked it. It definitely looked it.
We're already starting to see people with their little witch hats on, so that's always a good sign.
That's awesome. I love
Yep,
it.
there were 2 ladies who were on our evening tour who had their witch hats on.
Yeah. Oh, Helena says one day I'll visit Salem. I'd love to feel the energy for myself. You definitely should. It's a great town.
Well, there was a really kind of strange thing that happened last night, and these folks related the story to me and to my girlfriend Michelle before the tour started. They told her, and then after they told me. For people who've never been to Salem before, or even if they have, if you go to the Charter Street Cemetery, it is a beautiful, really old cemetery. 1637 they started putting bodies in it, and right next to it there is a memorial for the witch trials victims, the people who were unjustly killed as witches in 1692. There's 19 for the hanged victims and a stone for Giles Corey, who was pressed to death. And a lot of times people go there and they lay out offerings or tributes. Sometimes people come and they lay flowers for their ancestors, or people who are inclined certain spiritual ways, they'll leave crystals and coins, and every now and then you'll find like a really touching, nice little note left out there. But people know to leave that stuff alone. Like even most of the homeless people and street kids, if they see somebody put a few pennies on the witch trial benches, they're not going to mess with them. But last night, There were two women. They were witches that come all the way from Kentucky to be in Salem to feel the Salem energy, like the person just mentioned. And
Hmm.
they said that after whatever they did last night, they went to the memorial to lay out some crystals for people they felt connected to.
Yeah.
And as they went to the memorial, they said they got this eerie feeling that they were being watched. Like nobody was there looking at them, they said, but they laid out the crystals, but they had this weird feeling that somebody was right there with them.
Mm.
And so they put the crystals down, they left, and then they went back. Something drew them back there just a few minutes later, and somebody had snatched those crystals right up.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that is something that never happens at the memorial. People usually
Right.
have a lot of respect for it. So I don't know who snatched the crystals. I don't know why they had that feeling somebody was watching them, but
Huh.
that was the spookiest little thing I heard today.
That is really crazy. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions, but this one came up in the chat and I'm curious. They have to weigh as much as a duck to be a witch, right? Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, that's the good old Monty Python on the Holy Grail.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily Salem so much.
No. Also,
That's
one
awesome.
thing while we're talking about Monty Python,
Yeah.
that whole thing about dunking a witch or swimming a witch, the old test where if a person was suspected of witchcraft, they could be tied up and dunked into a body of water. If they drowned, it meant they were innocent, but it was okay because they went to heaven, and so that was fine. But if they came bobbing up, they would be hanged or executed another way because they were definitely witches. Only witches could float. We did not do that here in Salem.
Oh, good. Well,
That's something that comes up a lot. People ask me about that at least a couple times a week, and I have to tell them, nope. They did do dunking once or twice during the Connecticut witch trials, but here in Salem, it was all about the poking with the pins and the hangings, and the one pressing. Nobody was dunked here. So in Salem, it didn't matter if you weighed like a duck.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. I suppose.
So why is Jeremy Jones saying $2.99?
Jeremy Jones, I put that up there because I wanted to remember to thank him and Brett. They made super chat donations to Space Radio, so it's very nice of them.
Thank you. For a second, I thought it was Jeffrey Jones, the celebrity, the controversial celebrity.
Oh,
the dad from Beetlejuice.
Yes. So Kimberly said, the Fae could have taken the crystals at the memorial. That is possible, I suppose.
You never know.
That is true. All right. So I have a question for you to start out with. Now, your title is Dr. Vitka. What is your degree in?
Believe it or not, Divinity.
Oh.
Yes.
I believe it.
Yes, indeed.
Nice. When did you get that?
I originally got it in 2001 and then had it recertified in 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. They had there'd been some filing thing, and so my current version of the certificate is 2017.
Nice.
I've got it framed up in the office, but as you can see right now, I'm in the solarium instead of the office because I just moved in and everything is still a mess.
You should definitely have a solarium in your house.
Well, we're gonna fill it with plants, but the idea is fake plants because real plants are too much work.
They are a lot of work. You can't see them in my room, but it's full of plants. And
the idea is, Michelle and I hit upon this last night, to get a giant fake version of the plant from the Addams family. What was Morticia's plant called? Cleopatra?
Oh, was it? I can't remember.
The one with like the hand that would eat?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to try to make one of those for the corner here.
That's awesome. I love that. So also, I hear you may have been an MC or something for a freak show. Is this true? And how did you get into that?
Oh, it is very true. And honestly, as much as I love doing the Salem tours and I love doing the paranormal work, the Sideshow was the most fun and satisfying job I've ever had. The official position I had most of the time was what they call the talker, which is what the media usually calls the barker. You're not supposed to call it the barker, but I don't really care. Now, by this point in history, they're interchangeable terms. So basically, what I would do is I would stand on the front of the stage and I would tell people that they should come in. They needed to come in so they could see these amazing freaks that they'd never get a chance to see ever again in their life.
Yeah.
And they're here, they're real, they're alive, and they're waiting to meet you on the inside.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it was a great time. And I had always been interested in that. When I was a little kid in the school library, there had been a book about horror movies. And
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was not written for a grade school level because there were details about how they did like the blood tubes for the slashing in the Friday the
Mm,
13th type movies. And they had
yeah.
gory pictures in there. I'm pretty
Oh
sure the
boy.
teachers didn't approve this. But they had a chapter on the movie Freaks, the
Oh,
1932, I believe, Todd Browning movie that was cast using real sideshow performers. And
okay.
in this book, which was filled with gory, nasty pictures of monsters and descriptions of blood, they didn't show any pictures from Freaks. They actually said that this movie was so intense it's been banned in countries all over the world. And it was
Wow.
almost like sideshow hyperbole right there in the book. And so I had nightmares like how scary this movie could have been. Ooh. And I was seriously up all night just ruminating on these freaks. I was in like fourth grade and was terrified of the idea of it. And then some years later, that movie was on, I think, AMC, and I watched it. And just from the very first like clicking of the channel and the black and white
Mhm.
images, I'm like, oh no, this is that movie that in my mind scared me so much years ago. And I was hooked into it and I just fell in love with the story. And I saw these unusual people who were living and performing, and they had abnormalities that most people would think would be completely life ruining, but
Mhm.
instead they had built their own lives, they built their own communities, they were thriving, and it was in this beautiful setting. It was a 1930s movie, but because of the circusy kind of setting, it looked old fashioned and kind of dreamy. And I just totally fell in love with the world of Freaks and was fascinated by the idea of this traveling world, these
Mhm.
unusual people. And I
Yeah.
didn't really know that this actually still existed
I
because
didn't either.
I'd read that little thing about freaks when I was maybe 10, and then I saw
Mhm.
the movie on TV and got obsessed with it when I was in high school, and then started going into the horror cinema ideas. Uh, Dave, thank you for liking the mustache. I appreciate it.
I
It
put that
take
up there just for you.
it takes a while. But then, after I was in college, I had learned that the Coney Island Sideshow was still in business,
Mm,
still going strong. It's actually a nonprofit arts organization where they have performers. They have what they call working acts, people who do sword swallowing and fire eating. But
yeah.
sometimes they also have real human anomalies.
Oh.
Last year, or 2 years ago now, COVID made them not do anything last year. But 2 years ago, I went and met a wonderful performer who's taken on the mantle of Cuckoo the Bird Girl. She has that
Mhm.
very same appearance with the big bald head and the short physique and the sort of
Yeah.
beaky nose. And people like her will sometimes perform at the Coney Island show.
Hmm.
And so I was in college and I realized this still existed. And it just kind of became like a pipe dream that maybe I could work there sometime.
Yeah.
And then I was working at a very boring, awful, horrible corporate kind of job. And out of nowhere, my mother sent me a newspaper clipping like, ha ha, look at this. You can go to sideshow school.
Hmm. They
And it
have
was
a school for it?
they do. The Coney Island folks have a course that is kind of expensive, or at least it was for me at the time, where you
Mhm.
could go and learn how to do the stunts and performances. And so I basically quit the corporate job and went to Coney Island
Nice.
and tried to learn sword swallowing and fire eating and all that. But what I really got out of it was the contact information for a show called The World of Wonders, which
Mhm.
was at the time one of the only traveling sideshows left.
Yeah.
And I called them up and said, I want to join. And that's how I got
Mhm.
into it. I just called up and said, I want to join. And one of the owners was spinning yarns of how wonderful it would be, how I'd have a private trailer and it would be super easy and it would be really, really, really easy and just nice. And the other guy was much more realistic. It was like, it's hard work. You're not going to like it. And I gave it a chance. And honestly, it was grinding, backbreaking, but I loved it so much. I went back for the next 4 years and then intermittently with that show and then with another show for a couple after, and then briefly had my own little sideshow museum in Salem for one October season. I love that life. I love the community. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but it's the most intimate kind of performance when you're working with a live audience, especially an audience who may have never seen any sort of live theater before, or may have never even seen a live music performance. Like
Yeah.
we would do these little towns in the Midwest, and there were older people who would come up and were just blown away because it brought memories from their past back, where maybe they had gone and it was the 50s, 60s, or 70s, and they'd seen the lobster boy with the clawed hands. And then there were kids who would come up who were in high school or in college, like I had been, and didn't realize that there was any wider world outside of, say, Springfield, Ohio. And we were just opening up people's minds and also, grossing people out and having fun.
Yes.
Sometimes we had real human freaks. Sometimes
Yeah.
it was all fake stuff, but it was a time I wouldn't give up for anything. And honestly, if it paid better, I'd be there now.
That's awesome. Well, I don't know if you saw this, but the Unidentified Celebrity Review also is enjoying your mustache. That is a sweet stash.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Unidentified Celebrity Review. I did it just for you.
Now, you told me, oh, so sorry. You told me earlier that you had a paranormal experience.
Yes, this is great.
Tell us about that.
This comes from my former employee, the late Jim Zychek. He owned a sideshow. He had been a circus guy from the time he was a young man up until he struck out on his own and put the sideshow together. And he had been playing someplace way out west. And some folks came up to him and they had a small skeleton. It was all encased partially in cement or something, and in comes the skeleton, and it's messed up looking, and they asked if he wanted to buy it. And nobody's going to say no to buying a cool looking skeleton. And because it was small, he made up a story about it. He said the skeleton was the evil dwarf, and he made up this crazy tale about it being a Wild West outlaw, and he had a very eye-catching comical banner painted depicting the evil dwarf while it was alive. And there was a little plaque made up of the story about the evil dwarf. It said he robbed banks and trains, and he looked up ladies' skirts. And it was just a fanciful, fun story. And it was sold very well because even when people were outside and they saw the banner with the live dirty little man, when they came inside, if you're looking face to face with a real skeleton, you're not going to complain about it. Everybody loves a skeleton. But when he got home for the season, his girlfriend took one look at the evil dwarf in its little casket and said that she didn't want that in the house. She started having nightmares about the evil dwarf. She started having nightmares not about the evil dwarf, but about the skeleton. She had nightmares saying that it wasn't a little kid at all. It wasn't a dwarf, rather, at all. It was a little kid who had been horribly abused and murdered. And she wouldn't even let Jim keep it in the garage. He had to keep it like in a barn somewhere. And then the next season, when he took it out on the road again, he noticed that there were two young women looking at that skeleton, and they were looking at it way too long and hard. And when people look at stuff too long and hard, it can be trouble. So even though he owned the show, he went up to them and was kind of playing it down. He was like, "Oh, girls, you like the evil dwarf?" And the girls looked at him, and one of them said, "Yes, it's very interesting, but it's not it's not a little person." And he's like, "What do you mean?" Well, it turned out the girls were anthropology students.
Oh, wow.
And they saw the bones, and they said it was not a little person at all. It was an adolescent girl who had died from trauma to the head.
Oh, wow.
Like, they actually pointed out where the head had been dented, and they pointed out because of the length of the bones and what was in there that it would have been a young teenage girl.
Wow.
And hooked up perfectly with the story his girlfriend had been dreaming about, saying that the evil dwarf was
Hmm.
really a little girl who had met a bad end.
Wow,
So,
that's pretty crazy.
yeah, then he believed the story that his girlfriend had told about the evil dwarf and her dreams. I always thought that was amazing. And even though it was my job to present the dwarf as the
Mhm.
evil dwarf,
Right.
sometimes if people were really interested, I would tell the true story too, because that's even better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. All right. So I also want to talk about Salem while we have you
Of
here.
course. What about it?
Okay, so for those that don't know, Mike has a tour company called Spellbound Tours. Great tours. Um, so what got you interested in the Salem witch trials? How did you kind of come into that?
I had come to Salem to go to Salem State University.
Mhm.
And while I was here, I met a woman named Molly Stewart. And at the time, Molly Stewart was one of the best paranormal investigators in the area. I would put her up there with people like the Warrens. Now, I know some people don't like the Warrens because they made money off of what they did, and some people don't like them because of the religious angle of it. But personally, I think the Warrens were great. I think they were smart about the way they did it. I think they may have been tricked once or twice, but on the whole, they were great. And in my estimation, Molly should have been right up there on their level in the public eye. She was one of the first people who was using a certain high tech technology to do the ghost hunt. She was the first person in this area who was getting EVP on digital, and she had a little paranormal museum in Salem.
Mhm.
And as somebody who was just downtown Salem and always kind of into the spooky stuff, I
Yeah.
also needed a job, and I went in there, and the museum was the closest thing I'd ever seen to one of the freak show settings we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I took her tour. I saw the really amazing stuff in the museum and basically apprenticed with her to learn
Mhm.
about paranormal investigation.
Hmm.
She's actually a licensed parapsychologist for whatever that's worth.
Huh.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, the first few incarnations of her museum were amazing.
Yeah.
Towards the end, it was a little not the best, but the first couple of them would have knocked your socks off.
Oh
In fact,
wow.
when she first came to Salem, her
Mhm.
museum was in the space which is where the witch dungeon was.
Okay.
The location where the actual witch dungeon
Actual dungeon.
was,
Yeah.
it's now an office building, and you can rent space out there. And there's always space available because once you move in, you start getting haunted.
All
And it
right.
was a perfect fit for a paranormal investigator and a little supernatural museum. But if you looked at that guest book, people would say things like, "This is an awesome museum, but it was just too creepy to be in this space."
Yeah.
They felt like they got their money's worth looking at the ghost photographs and the artifacts like the African executioner's sword and all that cool stuff,
Mhm.
but they'd get that feeling like somebody was there with them. And
Okay.
so
So
I got to
I'm
know
sorry.
Molly and did some investigations with her.
Mhm.
And she used to own Spellbound Tours. She actually was the person who started it.
Okay.
She started it in New Orleans.
Mhm.
And when she finally was ready to retire, uh, didn't want to see Spellbound Tours go away. So me and my friend Nicole Ferree, who was also hooked in with the paranormal world, with the Life and Death Shop, which I talk about because of their vampire connection, um,
Uh,
we started. We took over Spellbound for Molly and kept her legacy alive and built from it. So it was Molly who actually got me from being a paranormal fan to somebody who can claim to be a paranormal professional.
wow. Okay. Well, that answers my. I was going to ask you how you became a paranormal investigator. That
Yep,
definitely answers that
basically
question.
trained with her. And
Nice.
she's still out there. We actually, Michelle and I just saw her this afternoon.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, she's still good. She's got a cute little dog now. Looks like a little fox. He's one of those things that's like a miniature Akita.
Oh, cute. They're really cute. So I do have a question for you from one of our listeners. She posted it on
Yes.
Facebook, and she wanted to know if there were any historical stories about witches escaping through caves or tunnels that you know of. She had an unexpected flashback memory of a past life, but had never heard anything like that. So she was just curious if there were other women accused of witchcraft. Witchcraft. So guys, take a drink if you're playing the game.
Did you say
That escaped somehow. I said witchcraft. Yes,
witchcraft? Okay.
I say it all the time.
I'd like to open a store and call it witchcraft.
That would be a great store in Salem. I think we need to open one.
But to my knowledge, there were no accused witches who escaped Salem via caves and tunnels. There are stories about tunnels in Salem, stories of which have varying degrees of truth to them regarding possible smuggling tunnels that may have gone from the waterfront to the downtown area. Not particularly well verified stories, but stories that will not seem to go away, and some stories that people do claim to have evidence for. So there may be evidence of smuggling tunnels in Salem, but there's no evidence of anybody escaping the gallows via tunnels or caves. However, when you mention that, what sparked in my mind is H.P. Lovecraft's story Pickman's Model, which, in my opinion, is Lovecraft's best story because it deals with a fictionalized version of the witch trials. And in Lovecraft's imagination, in the story, there is a tunnel that goes all the way from the Pickman house in Salem to Boston, and people are able to go back and forth through that. But I don't really think that that was real. That was in Lovecraft's fanciful imagination.
Gotcha.
But Lovecraft was the biggest Salem nerd you can imagine. Like it's really cool to think about it, because if you look at his letters, whatever you think of Lovecraft as a person or as an author, when he came to Salem, he was just glowing. And it was the same kind of feeling that people coming to Salem today get, because Lovecraft loved the works of Nathaniel Hawthorne. And there's a particular letter I remember where he's talking about sitting in the cemetery looking at Hawthorne's ancestor's grave, the awful hanging judge from the witch trials. And Lovecraft is just like, oh my goodness. I'm paraphrasing. He was more eloquent than that.
Right.
But he was obsessed. Like, you could tell he was having a super moment. And that's the same kind of feeling people get about Salem today, which is part of why I think it does stand out from some of the other witch trials around the world. Witch trials are not a unique thing. Witch trials are not unique to Salem. They're not unique to the United States. They're not unique to Europe. They go back as far back as people have been around. But part of the reason the Salem witch trials have captured our imagination so much is it's on a much more human scale. If you look at the witch trials in Europe, there were hundreds and thousands of people killed. Here in Salem, 19 hanged, Giles Corey pressed. That's a number that we can digest. It's a number that we can think of our own circle of friends, our family. It humanizes it that it's a smaller number like that. And because their stories are so well recorded, they're documents. There are court documents. Even just this afternoon at the wonderful Turner's Seafood Restaurant, as part of the wallpaper in the men's room, they have a copy of Bridget Bishop's interrogation. So we can actually see what these people were saying. We can see what they were feeling. And when people hear these stories, it becomes intimate to them. And you can see the personalities of the people shining through. It's not like a lot of the European witch trials where it's just like, and this lady was accused of being a witch, and they killed her.
Right.
The end. But in Salem, we have the details of their lives. We have the words they said right before they were killed. It's all very personal. That's what I think people get hooked on it now.
Yeah, I think
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So now I have obviously taken your tour several times. And one of the things that I always love is the story you tell about Giles Corey, because he's definitely misunderstood or misrepresented, I guess would be a better word.
Yes. In popular culture, we see Giles Corey as being a righteous person, a tough person, a badass kind of guy. But in real life, Giles Corey was a jerk. Giles Corey, in the context of the witch trials, good for him for standing up for his property, good for him for standing up for the truth and saying he wasn't a witch, but that doesn't negate the fact that he lived his life as just a mean, nasty guy. When you read The Crucible, when you have to be in the Crucible when you're in high school, they don't go into the fact that Giles Corey beat his servant to death. The guy worked for Giles Corey, and Giles Corey took advantage of him because, by our standards, he would have been mentally handicapped. He was sort of a simple man for the time, and Giles Corey took him in, paid him, but took advantage of the situation. And the guy made Giles Corey mad, so Giles Corey took his cane away from him and beat him to death with his own cane.
Oh my gosh.
And you know why Giles Corey didn't get really much punishment for that?
Come on.
Because the guy did not die immediately. He lingered on death's door for a little while, and then he died. And so Giles Corey was able to say, well, yes, I did beat him, but I didn't beat him to death. He died on his own.
Of course, yes. I think Giles was clever. He found a way out of it.
Well, there's also rumors that he might have done in one of his wives, maybe beat her and then pushed her down the stairs.
Right.
Not a nice man.
No, well, he did accuse his last wife of witchcraft. So
yes.
Not the greatest guy.
He did recant that at the end.
Right. Well, guilt was setting in, I'm sure, after he got accused. Okay, so D. McKenna wants to know, many modern day witches living in Salem today.
Many modern day witches are living in Salem. And that's something I think is really cool about Salem, is how open we are to it. Witchcraft is just another path you can be on. There's no judgment against witches in Salem, at least not any more judgment than there is against Christians or Muslims or people who practice the Raelian faith.
Yes, that is true. Typical Watch wants to know, can a ghost get close to a human?
I would say they can get close to a human, and they can even get into a human. And we want to talk about the difference between ghosts and entities, shall we say. Ghosts are what we would consider spirits or souls. You or I could become a ghost if we died. A ghost is a former human. So a ghost in and of itself is a human.
Right.
Oh, how cool. Kira says her husband's relative was the first witch to be executed in Salem witch trials. Bridget Bishop?
That's what I'm assuming. I asked her, but I don't think she's responded yet, but I'm assuming that's probably who she's referring to.
Okay, tell her.
Well, you tell her.
Okay. Well, Kira, if you find out if your husband is related to Bridget Bishop, send us an email, because I can get you hooked up with somebody who also recently discovered he's a Bridget Bishop descendant, and he's doing a big project now trying to find out everything he can about her and build out the family tree and all that. And so if your husband's got information, he might be able to help. If my friend has information, he might be able to help you guys put together the puzzle. And he's finding some information based on old records from England that Bridget Bishop might actually have been doing some kind of magic. Not necessarily what we would think of as witchcraft today, but like English folk magic stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think within the next couple of years, we're going to have to completely change our narrative about Bridget Bishop. That's just a prediction, but I think within the next couple of years, we're probably going to be considering her a witch of some kind or another, which is pretty fun.
That's exciting. So Andrew in Gnomes Trucking Express says, I believe people lied about it to some blame people who weren't even witches. And
they Andrew and Gnomes are totally correct. Yep. Nobody in Salem, with the possible exception of Tituba the slave and maybe now Bridget Bishop, would be what we would consider witches. All those people who were being accused were falsely accused. None of them were witches.
Except with the exception of possibly Bridget, you said, right?
Yes, and Tituba, who was probably doing voodoo.
Well, she was an interesting character, too.
She's my favorite character in the whole thing. And after I'm going to answer Jeremy's thing because that's one of my
Mhm.
favorite topics. He
Yes.
says, can animals like dogs and cats sense ghosts and spirits? And the answer is 100%. Animals are way more sensitive to this kind of phenomena than people are. Uh, Absolutely. Like I tell people every day that if you want to get into paranormal investigation, if you want to do ghost hunts, you are better to have a good dog with you than anybody who's spiritually inclined or the latest high-tech equipment. I actually
Mhm.
have a really cool story about that, animals and the paranormal. I live in a house in Salem that was built in 1706. It was a sea captain's mansion, and it's a big, beautiful house which has now been cut up into little apartments. And shortly after I'd moved in, Luke, the wonderful dog who you may hear snoring next to me, after one of our tours, we had taken a walk. And I went back to the apartment, walked up the stairs, and when I opened the door to our unit, we heard a woman's voice from inside say, "Good dog." And
Hmm.
it was kind of weird, but I didn't think anything of it because I knew somebody was coming over to visit.
Yeah.
But then Luke, the dog, would not enter. I'd gone in and I had to yank him in, and he was spooked. Didn't want to go in. And then I looked around and I realized my friend wasn't over. She couldn't have gotten in. She didn't have a key.
Hmm.
And yet Luke was like frozen, staring at the area of the room from which the voice had emanated. There
Wow.
was nobody in there whatsoever. And with a little bit of research, we discovered that the captain who had the house built for him, he
Mhm.
went down at sea, and apparently his wife had become what we'd consider like an animal hoarder. So it totally made sense that she would be saying hello to Luke.
Yes, definitely. So Jeremy says, thank you for answering. My golden retriever is very, very alert at night outside and will stare off into something without moving. And I feel like she's seeing something because her ears go back. Odd.
I would say get a camera, take pictures, take
Mhm.
recordings. Animals are very sensitive to it. Obviously, sometimes they're just being cats or dogs,
Mm.
but sometimes they're onto it. See how they react. See if is it like a negative reaction? Is she reacting the way she'd react to another animal or another person? Yeah, see how the dog reacts.
Yeah,
Take
because
pictures.
you do have a picture of a cat with an orb, correct?
Yes. Oh, I love that one.
Mhm.
It's it's a perfect orb because a lot of time orbs are junk. They're camera flashes, their lens, their dust. But this picture is a complete circle. The orb is the same grade of color all the way through, and the cat is staring directly at it. And there's another picture. I don't know if I've shown you, but it's an old one from, I believe, the 1950s. And it's a cat sprawled out on the porch just relaxing. And you
Mhm.
can see a swirl of energy right around it. It's
Oh, no.
beautiful.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. Kara says, my cat can see the ghosts and orbs in our house, and I've caught her on video watching an orb. That's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, animals are the best ghost hunters out there.
Yes,
Do your little
absolutely.
guys ever see anybody?
Not in this place that we're in now, but when I lived in Beverly, my Westie often would bark at something up in the like top corner of the ceiling. And then my cat would also come over and his hair would stand up. So there
Mm.
was a little something there, but yeah, I never took a picture. Actually, I do have a picture or no, a video. I got to find it of my cat playing with, I don't know if you would consider it an orb, but it was inside the house and it looked almost like a cotton ball. And I was watching it while I was videotaping it, looking like, is there something there? There was nothing there, but it looks like this little like cotton ball flying around him and he's kind of like following it.
So you didn't visually see it with your eyes, but when it
Yeah.
was on camera, you could see it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. It was really interesting. Oh, I like this question. Oh, where is it? D. McKenna wants to know what's the difference between voodoo and hoodoo?
Ooh, boy. That is a question that is answered in many books and can get people in trouble for asking it, or not asking it, for answering it. Um, Voodoo, to my understanding, is more of the version that grew up in Africa and Haiti, and it was the slave religion, the religion that the slaves were merging, taking elements of Christianity, and it was growing in that. Hoodoo is more Appalachian. It's more root work type stuff. Hoodoo is more of an Americanized version of it. They have similar names and they can be similar practices, but they're very different things in and of themselves. A voodoo person and a hoodoo person would not be the same at all. There's in voodoo, depending on how you're initiated into it, there's different hierarchies in it. There's different spirits that you are in touch with. Hoodoo, to me, seems more earthy based than spiritual based. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of in witchcraft circles, it's similar to the difference between Wicca and witchcraft.
Yes,
Wicca being the more religious, spiritual side of things, that would be voodoo, and witchcraft, which is the spell work, that would be hoodoo. In fact, a lot of us, I myself incorporate a lot of hoodoo practices into my work as well. I find it fascinating. Let's see. So Sinfinity Lizard wants to know, is voodoo similar to Santeria or is it very different? It's similar and
similar. It's similar. It's the same tree, but very, very different branches.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I want to get back to Salem for a minute. So we know Salem is haunted. It is. That kind of goes without saying, right? What would you feel is the most haunted location in Salem?
Ooh, boy, the most haunted location in Salem, or the most haunted location that we can actually talk about because people might try to go to?
I know where you're talking about. You
Oh,
know what? I don't? Well, then that's the one we need to talk about.
Do you think I'm talking about the hill?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
I'll whisper it. There's a particular building at Salem State University.
Oh.
Yep. The only investigation that we've ever called off, because it just felt too weird, was at a particular building at Salem State.
Oh, I wish you'd known me then. I would have come.
This was probably back in maybe 2013 or 2014.
Yes.
Oh, that's a fun question.
Yes. Are there good witches and bad witches? Yes, I'd be considered a bad witch. No, I don't think there are good witches and bad witches. It depends on who you ask, in my opinion.
I've got a list of bad witches.
Depends on if we're talking personality or practice. So
true. Yeah. I mean, there's people who work with the light spirits and the people who work with the darker spirits, but that doesn't denote good or bad. Right. And it's just like any sort of faith. There are people in any spiritual path who get into it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
There are witches who do it to harm people, and there are witches who do it for personal growth and to help other people. So it's not really good or bad witches. It's good or bad people. Right.
That's for sure. And even if you work with the darker things, as I myself do, that doesn't make you a bad witch.
Right.
Yes, but oh wait, hold on. Voodoo. Oh, okay. This is an interesting one. Angels Are Life. Voodoo, hoodoo, Santeria, and necromancy. Aside from the voodoo, well, voodoo does work with spirits, so that is similar to necromancy. So there are similarities, I'd say, in all of them.
But I feel like necromancy is more like working with the actual corpses and that sort of thing.
Yes, it can be, for sure. It depends.
In my version of necromancy, you need to get in there. You need to really get in there. You need to like build an nganga. You need to get it working.
Right. Yes. Okay. So the most haunted location in Salem is at Salem State. Now, so we all kind of know some of the stories about the Salem witch trials. Is there any one person from the witch trials that is the most kind of prolific ghost or spirit that you hear about in Salem, like people interacting with or seeing or having encounters with?
Giles Corey. Without a doubt, Giles Corey is the person from the witch trials who does not get any rest whatsoever.
Right.
Do you want me to tell you all a little about Giles Corey, just in
Yeah,
case
sure.
people
Go for
haven't?
it. Yeah.
So Giles Corey, as we mentioned, was a nasty guy, and he got accused of witchcraft. The conventional theory on it is because he was a wealthy landowner, people wanted to get his wealth and money, and if he pled innocent or guilty, he could be brought to trial, and if he was executed, his property would be up for grabs in one way or another. When people just straight out say somebody made an accusation on you, if you were found guilty, you'd get their property, that is a gross oversimplification of it, but there were ways for other people to get your stuff if you were accused of witchcraft. Giles Corey didn't want to be executed, obviously, and probably even more so, didn't want to put his finances in jeopardy. So when he was accused of witchcraft, he refused to plead. And as long as he didn't make a plea, they couldn't kill him. He thought he would be able to wait it out. He thought that the people of Salem would come to their senses and eventually he'd be freed and maybe they'd even apologize or compensate him. But that did not happen. Sheriff Corwin, who was the high sheriff of Salem at the time, who by some accounts really relished his job torturing people, wanted to make an example out of Giles Corey. So he decided he was going to make Giles Corey plead innocent or guilty. So Sheriff Corwin took Giles Corey from the dungeon and threatened him with pressing. Now, the idea of pressing is it's an interrogation, a torture, where a person is slowly crushed under enormous weight. And usually even the threat of being pressed was enough to make somebody confess to whatever you wanted them to. But not Giles Corey. He said nothing. To paraphrase, he said, "Go ahead and press me. I'm not going to make a plea." So Sheriff Corwin started adding heavier and heavier and heavier stones to Giles Corey's body. And this went on for days. He would look down at Giles Corey being pressed and I'd ask him, "How do you plead, innocent or guilty?" And Giles Corey did not say a word, so Sheriff Corwin kept adding heavier and heavier stones to his body. Now, by the end of the third day of this torture, Giles Corey's eyes were bulging out of his head. He was gasping for breath. His face was purple and his tongue was poking out of his mouth. Now, the sheriff, he knew he'd beaten Giles Corey at this point, so he took a stick and he poked Giles Corey's tongue back down in his throat. And he asked him for the last time, "You're going to die. How do you plead?" Now, this time, Giles Corey finally said something. He looked up at the sheriff, he spat at him, and he said, "Add more weight." Now, the sheriff was enraged by Giles Corey's defiance, so he picked up the heaviest stone he could and smashed it down on Giles Corey. Now, obviously, this killed Giles Corey. He was so crushed that people say his organs squashed out of his sides. And as he lay there dying, his final words were, "Damn you, Sheriff Corwin. I curse you and all of Salem." And after that, Giles Corey perished. Now, Sheriff Corwin, he died too not long after. He was only in his 30s and he had a sudden heart attack and died. Now, even though Giles Corey was not a witch, the intention of his curse seems to have worked. Nearly every sheriff in Salem since then, up until modern days, has died or had to retire with heart attacks or blood disease. And so to this day, the curse is still active. The head of the sheriff department for this county was actually moved from Salem to another town. And it seems like that might have broken the curse. But Giles Corey does appear in Salem before other tragedies. Are you familiar with the story of the Great Fire of 1914?
I am, but the audience may not be. So go ahead and tell them about it.
So in Salem, there's a cemetery called Howard Street Cemetery. And Howard Street is the one street in Salem we're not allowed to take tours down. And that may be because, in addition to the neighbors who complain about it, some of the crypts and things have started to cave in a little bit. If you walk in exactly the wrong place in Howard Street, you can end up sinking into somebody's grave. Now, back in 1914, a number of people who lived along Howard Street saw an old man in the cemetery. He was there for hours. They thought he was lost and confused, and they went to help him. But when they got close, they realized this old man looked like the illustrations they'd seen of Giles Corey. Somebody reached out to shake his hand, and then the figure vanished into thin air. Hours later, like in the wee hours of the morning, the city of Salem burned to the ground. The fire started on Gallows Hill, where the other accused witches had been hanged, and the fire tore through the city, and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of property was destroyed. A couple of people burned to death in the fire with their flesh burning off their bones. And to this day, there were people in Salem who still believe that that sighting of Giles Corey was an omen that the tragedy was going to happen. People still say that they see Giles Corey before something bad happens. In fact, a friend of mine who used to do security for the tour, one night he claimed that he felt Giles Corey with us.
Yeah.
And I thought his imagination had gotten the better of him, but not long after, he just dropped dead. I wanted to see if he was going to work with us again, and I got word from his family that he was no longer with us.
Oh,
and
wow.
that happened very, very quickly after he allegedly saw Giles Corey.
Wow.
And I think part of the reason that Giles Corey is so mad is we're telling his story all day long with varying degrees of accuracy. Now, that's one of the things about the witch trial story is everybody puts their different spin on it. And some people tell a very strict, by the books version of this is exactly what was said. Here are the facts and just the facts with no interpretation. Other people make it totally fanciful and they extrapolate from the facts to tell a good story about it. And then other people just totally make stuff up. And I think somebody like Giles Corey, first of all, wouldn't like people talking about him, period. Whether it was good stuff or bad stuff, he'd want to be left alone. And then added to that, the fact that people talk all this negative stuff about him would make him even angrier. And the fact that he's now sort of both a hero and a villain in the witch trials thing, he wouldn't like that. And I think that we are stirring him up every day, and he's getting madder and madder and madder. Giles Corey is the one you cannot escape in Salem. If you hear one story about the witch trials when you visit Salem, if there's one thing, when I ask people who come to Salem if any names are familiar, even if they don't know Giles Corey, they say, "What about that guy who was stoned?"
Yeah.
And they mean Giles Corey.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows of him. So Kira, she was the one who was saying her husband was related to the first witch executed. She said it was Martha Allen Carrier.
Bridget Bishop was the first one executed, but Carrier was right up there. That's really interesting, though. I want to know, how did she do the genealogy and find out? Yeah, that's really cool. I wish I had a witch trials connection. Didn't you just discover that one of your relatives was accused back in Salem?
I did, yes. Her name was Sarah Pease, and she was accused of witchcraft. And her husband possibly was too, but there are no records to show that. But there are a couple of sources that say he was. But she escaped the trial. She kind of got accused, I guess, right, towards the end of it. Well, actually, no, she didn't. She just spent most of the time in the dungeon. She just never got called to trial before the governor called the trial off. So she lucked out.
She was one of the lucky ones, one of the very lucky ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did she spend her entire time in the Salem dungeon, or was she transferred to one of the less horrible ones?
No, she spent the entire time in the Salem dungeon.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you know about her life after being in the dungeon?
There's not much that it says. All it says that I could find was that she lived for 12 more years afterwards. They didn't really... Oh, Kira says she remembers learning about Sarah Pease. That's cool. Awesome. That is very cool. Yeah, she had an interesting accusation against her. One of the guys that was accusing her said she came up and pinched him, which is hilarious. So, I guess that was a witchy thing to do at that point in time. Yeah, right?
I liked that quote you said from the records the other day, that she was accused of sundry acts of witchcraft.
Yes.
that's not a specific number, and it doesn't say what those acts were. That's
Right.
too vague.
It
There's
is.
nobody who could be convicted on that now.
Right.
But not long ago, and this sort of circles back to the Voodoo and Santeria. I was speaking to a woman who is a public defender in Florida, and she ends up defending a lot of people who are accused of putting curses on people. And that was one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard, because apparently, in the eyes of the law, because of the intent of the curse, that can be construed as a legitimate threat. The lawyers will get into it, talking about, well, they did make this doll, they did say these words, and they end up having to parse it out as to how real the threat was. And sometimes that leads them into very sticky territory where they're trying to figure out. It almost becomes a courtroom debate about the effectiveness of magic, and the judges have to reel it back and just say, no, strictly, would putting this thing on their doorstep count as a real threat?
Yeah.
And it's all about the intent and psychology behind it, which is really cool, which means in the eyes of the law, we basically do, in a way, recognize the effectiveness of witchcraft.
Right. And I think that's fascinating that they do. So I do have another question for you too. Going back to Salem, is there any time of the year that you think Salem is more paranormally active?
That's a good question. I would say that Salem, like all the other places, tends to be more active around anniversaries from the events of the witch trials. I would say if you look on the calendar when the people were executed, especially the dates of the mass hangings where they did more than one,
Right.
those are the dates where it gets kicked up a little bit. Also, I know this might sound a little cliched, but in October. And that's because there were so many people who come from all around the world drawn to Salem. Some of them are serious students. Some of them just want to party. But the fact that all of these different people are here bringing all their energy in brings a real different feeling to Salem in October. And sometimes it's almost overwhelming. It's almost like what some people describe when they go to Israel or the Holy Land. They get what's called Jerusalem syndrome, where they just are so blown away by the beauty and the history of everything, they decide, oh, I'm a prophet now. And they really believe it. And that's how many people feel when they come to Salem. They just get overwhelmed and become instant witches.
I've noticed that too, yes. They're like, you know what? I think I am a witch. Or they've been a witch in a past life or something. Yeah, they have a witch connection, which I'm like, hey, welcome.
Which is really fun. My girlfriend, Michelle, actually is realizing that she's always been a witch, but is just now putting it into words and looking into the practices of it, which is fun.
Oh, that is awesome.
So we've got witches developing all over.
Yes. We're converting everyone.
Oh, I think the question from Jim, that's your specialty right there.
Does the history of Salem lend it to being a focal point for entities aside from ghosts like demons, etc.? I would say that it certainly could. I haven't personally noticed anything. But I think anytime you get in October when it's a ton of people, it's like you're at Disneyland. That's how many people there are. That certainly is, and I would say an opening for other entities to come in, because there is so much combined energy and people are all focused on the witch trials, which, while it's interesting, wasn't a great experience for people, putting it lightly. So, I think there certainly could be. I haven't really heard anything too much, but I have heard of other ghosts that were, I guess, on the peripheral of the witch trials, people having, interactions, or they felt they've had interactions with other people. But I haven't noticed it really being. Salem has pretty good energy, aside from, the tragedy that happened. The energy itself is pretty good. I haven't noticed anything super dark there.
Now, talking about entities, how about my favorite entities right here? Oh, can the camera see that? The little alien guy?
Other side.
There we go.
There you
It's up
go.
there.
Yep.
There we go. One of the best UFO sightings ever recorded was in Salem. It was
Mm-hmm.
a 1954 sighting down by the Coast Guard station. And it was a picture of four glowing objects just zooming through the sky. And it was taken by military personnel and even Project Blue Book, which was made to discredit all UFO stuff. They have never been able to disprove this particular spread of saucers. I think the image is even in the Library of Congress. I did a live video about it maybe a year and a half ago about how Salem's alien history may correlate with the witch trials history too. I'm not going to go and say that Salem's a doorway for things, but we do have a lot of that kind of energy here too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's Sidfinity Lizards. She was thinking the same thing you were, I guess. At the same time, is there any connection between Salem and extraterrestrial activity? Yes,
it's like synchronicity, lizard.
Right? Yeah.
Well, this was really more of like a thought exercise, but it is very interesting when you talk about the abduction scenarios and the alien communication and how certain people were acting during the witch trials. Like, think about some of the abduction experiences, and I know some people prefer to be called experiencers, but I like the old-fashioned term and just calling them abductees, but that's me. But some people who have been abducted talk about how they end up meeting other people up in the spaceships. They talk about meeting other people who, for whatever reason, have been chosen. They talk about the entities talking to them and giving them just a little breakdown of what they have to do. And that sounds an awful lot like the stories of how the witches in Salem would all be brought out to the woods, that all fly out to the woods and that gather in a circle and that end up talking to what they called the black man from Boston. Not black as in African American, but black as in the old-fashioned terminology meaning evil. And first of all, I wouldn't necessarily interpret aliens as evil, but in that context, the witch trial story about these people flying somewhere, being met with these weird beings, and basically being told what to do and what they should do, and the warnings. They were being told they had to sign the devil's book. A lot of people who are taken up by the aliens are given very specific messages for whatever reason. And just like the devil's book, we don't know what that really means. Like, the aliens might be doing a psychological experiment on it. They might just be messing with us and telling us these ideas of destruction and salvation. But for whatever reason, people are getting these messages. Is it real? Is it psychological? Is it a mass illusion? Whatever it really is, it's the same thing that people were either experiencing or making up during the witch trials time period. We just put a different lens on it. Maybe it was a very real physical communication. Maybe it was mass psychosis, but that imagination, that idea of other beings taking us, it's totally the same thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I think that there's definitely something to it. Let's see. Well, Angels Are Life, she said, what about Salem and cryptids, which I do want to answer, but this one, Dee McKenna said, aliens and witches must go there. Agreed.
Yes.
It's great. So have you heard about any cryptids that are local to Salem in particular?
I wish. That's actually something I joke with on the tour with guests, because we have endless ghost stories. We have witches, both real and imaginary. We can dredge up the alien tales, but yeah, never seen a cryptid in Salem.
No.
I joke like the one thing we don't have is a Bigfoot. However, Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is pretty close to Salem, has had a great history of sea monsters.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, there were some cool tales about Gloucester having the very classical ones too, the ones that look almost like dragons, but the humps go up and under and humps up and under, and then the head comes out. Yeah. Even in the 1960s or 70s, I remember my mother talking about when she was a little girl, they all went to Gloucester to see the sea monster that washed up on the shore, but it turned out to be a dead whale or something. But Gloucester, probably because of their seafaring heritage, they've had sea monsters. Uh, that's our closest local cryptid.
Yes.
There was one person who I don't think they have much credibility at all, but they did say they saw a thunderbird at Forest River Park. I don't think they did.
Yeah,
but
that would be
maybe.
interesting though, right? Oh my gosh. I love Curious. That would make a great movie, Aliens and Witches Adventures. Absolutely. Oh, hi, Science Bob. Science Bob's joining us. So I've seen a couple people, and I just asked, to clarify, say that why do witches fly on brooms? We don't. But, I should know the basis for that. So if any of the other, I know we have a couple other witches in the group. If anybody remembers where that association comes from.
I'm not going to say it because we don't want to get too explicit, but
oh yes, you just reminded me of it.
There's a couple of different reasons that both go in explicit territory, which is where the broom myth comes from.
Yes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I found that as the answer too. It's not just sweeping out the energy.
No, it's not. That is what we use it for now. That is, yes.
You're not if you're cleaning your circle, if you will.
Yeah, it's if you're interested, look up witch's broom and flying ointment, and we will warn you now, it might be graphic. So
well,
that's what we're going to go on with that.
Did you see that article that was going around maybe about 2 years ago, the medieval texts about how witches would keep certain anatomical things in boxes?
Oh no, really?
They would rob men of certain attributes and keep them as weird little pets in boxes.
I have several right behind me. I do not. I do, however, I don't think you've ever met her. My haunted doll, Lily, everyone. This is Lily.
What is the tale about her?
So Lily is supposedly haunted by a child, and the claims they said was that sometimes you will hear her singing songs, and she supposedly likes children and pets. This is what I was told. So I was like, okay, I have the perfect house for her. And I will say, when I got her, I had her like sitting kind of near me. I had just gotten her. She was on the bed. And I hung out with her for a few days. I just wanted to get a feel for Lily. She's great. I love her. My animals were immediately drawn to her.
Really?
One of my cats cuddled up right next to her, gave her some kisses on the face. My dogs came right over to her. So that was fascinating. And my youngest daughter, she didn't know the claims about Lily, but she said she knew that Lily was a haunted doll, or that I had said Lily was a haunted doll. And she's like, the other morning, this is my 13-year-old. For those of you that were here at the end of everybody's saying hi to Lily. I should bring her over. Let me see if I can, so you guys can see her. My 13-year-old that was complaining about her sister at the end of the last show. This is Lily. She's very sweet. So my daughter came up, and it was early in the morning. She was getting ready for school, and I hadn't quite gotten up yet. And she heard somebody singing. And so she thought it was me. So she came in to see me, but I was still sleeping. And so then she realized Lily was right out here. And she was just like, I think I heard Lily singing this morning. Somebody was singing this morning. I thought it was you, but you were still sleeping. So I don't know.
Was it a particular song?
I don't remember. I'll have to ask her, but I like Lily. She creeps Dave out a little bit. My Dave Hurley. Dave Scott has not seen Lily yet. So Dave Scott, if you're here, meet Lily.
That vacant face.
Yeah, I think she's very sweet. But yes, she does kind of have a little like, whoa, look on her face. But so, yeah, she's very sweet. All right. So enough about Lily. A Lily tangent. Even Science Bob saying hi. Does sage smudge? Wait, what is this? Does sage smudging ward off dogmen? I don't know. I've never heard that before. I have no idea.
I don't think we don't have dogmen here. I mean, I have, like I said, Luke is snoring next to me, but he's more dog than man. Um, isn't the dog man more like a Detroit area kind of thing? Dog man is a Michigan cryptid.
I'm not sure where Dogman is from. Hold on a second. Joey, are you talking about Lily's eyes? Did you see them move? Because no, they don't move. That's why I was just looking, like, seeing if I could make them move. They don't move. So I'm curious if you saw her eyes move.
I mean, I feel like they're following me around the room.
Yeah, but it's just that look that like, yeah. All right, so while we're waiting to see if they saw Lily's eyes moved. Oh, I had another question for you. So some theorize that some or all ETs that come here to Earth are interdimensional in nature. That is a theory that some people have. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that ghosts are something we could be considered to be interdimensional as well?
I'd say I like that idea. I would never discount the interdimensional theory.
Mm-hmm.
That fits a lot with the ideas of fairies, which I like that idea. I like the correlation between the extraterrestrial hypothesis and the fae. But personally, I like the extraterrestrial idea. To me, that just feels comforting. But
Yeah.
definitely, I do think that I'm open to the idea of different dimensions. There's no reason to think not.
Right.
As far as ghosts go, just my opinion, ghosts are not in a different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
They're trapped here. Maybe when they move on from here, they go elsewhere. But to me, I think they're just trapped energy. I think that you or I could leave an energy imprint here. And whether it's conscious or not, that opens up a whole other can of worms.
Yes.
But a ghost is leftovers from a human being. And maybe once it fully moves, it goes to a different dimension. But I think that ghosts are just earthbound type people.
Yes.
But
okay. So do you think, hold on, Mari has a doll that she wants to get rid of, so I'm going to tell her to message me. Dave will be thrilled. Sorry, Dave. So I've always kind of wondered this. Now, I've heard there was a particular medium who was on TV, and one of the things that she has said on a couple of the shows, and it is one of the shows that I find to be a little more realistic, but she talks about how sometimes we can leave a portion of ourselves in a place when something has happened, say a traumatic event or whatever. So she has sensed people, and then I don't know if I can say the name of the show, but it's a medium and a cop, or and a retired detective. So he does all the detective work. She does the mediumship, and then they come together at the end and compare notes. And so
fun.
and she works with a sketch artist to sketch out like the most, important ghost or whatever encounter she had, so that the people she's talking to can have a visual. And one of the things she has said on several of them, she's found, like, she's described this person, the sketch artist has sketched them out, and the person is actually still alive. And the detective will have like their mugshot, and it looks like the same person. And so what she's explained is that we can leave a portion of ourselves. So, I've always been curious if, like, maybe is that what some of these spirits are? They're conscious, but it's not the entire spirit or soul, person, being. It's just a portion of us. I don't know.
To me, that sounds like the energy echo kind of idea. Yeah, I would say that they're not necessarily conscious the way that you or I would be conscious. They're a different level of consciousness. They're just reacting to that trauma again and again and again, like a loop, almost like the imaginary ghosts in the Disney World Haunted Mansion. You flip the switch and they're on their track all day. And that's what I think about the bit of the spirit being left behind. It's just there repeating the cycle until something moves it along. And then once it moves along, it's not going to go get conscious anywhere. It's just going to dissipate.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, that makes sense. This was also interesting. Kimberly says, yes, speaking of interdimensions, so we're kind of going back. What about portals and vortexes in Salem? Any particular ones you like? Or I would say, do you know of any particular ones?
I would say we're not talking vortexes like in, say, Sedona,
Hmm.
but we are on some pretty strong ley lines. It's
Hmm.
funny how these things go in cycles. About 10
Yeah.
years ago, when I was doing the tours and the investigations in Salem, people were all about the ley lines. Now they don't talk about them much, but we are supposed to be on some pretty charged up area. So I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I could definitely consider Salem being a place where portals could exist.
Definitely. So Mari said that she has some pictures of ghosts that she took. So I told her I was telling her to email you.
Oh, I'd love to
Um,
see them. Sometimes
yeah,
it takes a
'cause
little while to get back, but I would love to see them. Sometimes, though, I do end up debunking them,
that is true. Yes.
but sometimes we verify them. Like that one which I showed you the other day, the amazing face in the window.
Yes. That was
Uh,
really cool.
Usually, when people show me a face in the window kind of thing, I have to
Hmm.
disappoint them and explain how our eyes look for patterns and it's just a play of light. But
Hmm.
this picture was taken outside of a home where Nathaniel Hawthorne, the author, wrote from and about. And as soon as they showed me this picture, they came up and they said, I think there's somebody looking at us out that window. And my first reaction was like, oh no, don't show me a face in the window. But then they showed it to me, and immediately my mind went to that famous picture of Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Yes.
This looks just like him, and I
Mhm.
seriously think it is too much of a coincidence to be just a random play of shadows and lights.
Yeah, it does. It does look just like him. I got to see the picture. It is pretty amazing. Um,
Eventually, I'm going to add it to the collection we show visitors on the tour.
I
I
think
just
that's a
need to
great
stop
idea.
being lazy and put it into the tablet.
Angels or Life wants to know if you deal with demonology.
That's more of your deal.
It is,
Uh,
yeah.
it's something I'm very intrigued by. It's something that I've read up about, but I'm not personally contacting any of them and hanging out with them.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, so angels, if you have any questions, you can definitely ask me and I will do my best to answer. If there's anything in particular that you're wondering about. So, so did we talk about, like, do you think there are any portals in Salem? Like, for me personally, one of my favorite places in Salem is, well, oddly enough, I do like going to Proctor's Ledge. I'm one of the weird people you warned everybody of on the tour, but I like Proctor's Ledge, and I wonder now, maybe I'm crazy, but since my ancestor kind of lucked out and didn't go there, maybe that's why I feel a sense of peace at Proctor's Ledge, because she didn't have to go through that. But I love the Charter Street Cemetery. It's so good.
Mm.
So good.
I would say a place for me in Salem that really does feel charged with energy would be Green Lawn Cemetery.
Hmm.
It's a more modern cemetery than the one you just mentioned,
Yeah.
but it is beautiful and it feels very active.
Mhm.
Honestly, I've come across more people doing after hours rituals in Green Lawn than in Charter Street.
Hmm. Well, Charter Street is really small, but they do have that tree, the
Oh,
lightning tree. Do
yes.
you want to tell them about that?
There is a tree in the cemetery which has been hit by lightning so many times it shouldn't really be possible. And coincidentally, right next to that tree is a tombstone where the epitaph describes the person dying from a lightning strike. And that's just a fantastic coincidence. And a lot of our people who will do witchcraft and voodoo rituals in the cemetery gravitate towards the lightning tree. You'll know it when you see it. There's another tree in that same cemetery that some of the witchy folks refer to as the mother tree. It's just a real big one. All of a sudden, I can't hear you.
So sorry.
There you go.
Is it the tree that's on the right, kind of in the back? I always go to that tree. I didn't know that other witches like it, but that's the tree. Like, I always, when I'm there, if I find twigs on the ground from that tree, I always pick them up.
That tree is so huge. Like you can see the scale of it. It
Yeah.
was probably there as a little tree when the cemetery was first being planted.
Yes. Yeah, it is a beautiful tree. It has really good energy. I don't know what it is about it.
Some of the trees are. Oh, hey, Luke, hush. Hey. Shh. Luke, cut it out.
Luke wants to talk about his paranormal investigations. He's got something to tell us.
Hold on just a minute. Let me go see if I can calm him down.
Okay. I will answer some questions while you're doing that. How do you find where ley lines are? There are maps that have the ley lines on them. I thought she was applesauce. Were you talking about me doing a spell? There you pick up on very old energy. Mari, are you talking about the cemeteries or the one in Salem? Which I talked about in Salem, that Charter Street Cemetery actually has a passenger from the Mayflower buried there.
And also one of Johnny Cash's ancestors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Thomas Cash or something like that. Yeah. I only learned that recently, and I find that pretty fun. Yeah, I'm sorry Luke is barking. I don't know what what he sensed.
Yeah, he sees a ghost. He wants to talk. Speaking of Luke, now you do bring him on your investigations, you said, correct?
Yes. Like I mentioned before, having a good animal is the best ghost detection you'll ever have. And Luke is a pretty brave boy, but he will not go to Gallows Hill. He will not go to Proctor's Ledge. He does not like it. If he gets close to, like, we're sniffing around near that Walgreens, and if we go up the side, he's fine. But if we go near even the memorial, he does not like to go.
Really? The new memorial, he doesn't like?
Yep. As you heard, he is loud, he's cute, and he's sweet, but he can be aggressive. But on Gallows Hill, he is a scared little guy.
Aww. Kira said he's sending, I think she means sensing a being or ghost for sure. Maybe. Let Luke speak. What does it say? Sounds like a good fella.
He's a good boy.
He is so
cute.
He
was actually, I know this is kind of derailed from paranormal, but he was a shelter dog, which are the best dogs ever. All right, they need to see him.
They need to see Luke. See if you can get Luke. Maybe that's what he wants attention. Oh, he is very cute. I wonder if someone would know if they saw their gravestone from a past life, Denali Princess. That's an interesting question. I don't know. I suppose that Luke is pissed. I think it's possible somebody could. All right, let's see if Luke's coming over to say hi to us.
Oh, no, after his barking, he curled up in his bed, so we're going to move to him.
Oh, he wore himself out with all the barking. I'm amazed my dogs have been as quiet as they have been. Oh, now we get to see all of Mike's awesome decorations.
It is a little bit messy because I'm still moving in, but
it's looking good though.
You see him?
Up a little bit. There he is. Oh, hi, Luke.
You are on screen, buddy.
Oh, you're famous, Luke. Even Dave doesn't show us his dogs.
Did you see he tired out?
Yeah. He's like, I said what I had to say. Now I'm good.
And now we're sort of creeping back out.
Look at that. He's one of our people.
Oh, yeah.
The alien and Sasquatch. And
do you see the rib bone and little burial shroud piece?
Oh, yeah. What is that from?
Well, I'm not going to say where the shroud came from.
Okay.
But it was definitely salvaged from somewhere.
Oh, interesting. All right. Sounds like a story there. Okay, so I have a question about your paranormal investigations. If there is any one place that you could go to that you haven't been to yet to do a paranormal investigation, where would that be?
Oh, boy. And this is open to the entire world, huh?
Yeah. Yes.
There is just so much stuff out there.
Right.
What I would love it if they would let us do a real full-scale investigation in that hospital in London where the Elephant Man was.
Hmm.
Because I know
Interesting.
we went there and we, poked around a little bit and got some sensations, but because it's just a very academic place, it's still a hospital. Right now, they're not into having investigations done there. But I feel like that would be a place where if we could go all out, that would be a seance that would end all seances. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. Somebody, where is it? Oh, Jeremy Jones said Gettysburg. I haven't ever been to Gettysburg either, but it is somewhere that I would love to go see.
I am making the shooting my head motion of Gettysburg because Gettysburg is by all accounts, an amazing place. It has so much energy from all the people who died there,
Mhm.
but it is so overworked.
Yeah.
Gettysburg is a place where I almost feel like the ghosts are like Michigan J. Frog. They just kind of pop up and yeah, Gettysburg. I I joke that the people in Gettysburg must be as sick of hearing about Salem as we are as hearing about Gettysburg.
Yeah, that's probably very true. I imagine it's probably a lot like Salem too, which like I've noticed like so many people come that it's almost
Yes.
like the energy of Salem has been a little diluted.
Like I do want to have the experience of going there, but
Hmm.
I also don't feel like we'd get any fresh revelations. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we wouldn't get evidence that hasn't already been documented. Although there was somebody I met just the other day who'd actually gone to the Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, now that is a place I would love to go
They
to.
they found it. They had video of the signs. They had videos of the helicopters, and then they had video of just weird lights in the sky streaking by.
That is interesting. Yeah, that's a weird place for sure.
And
That's
I
why I would love
first I first became aware of Skinwalker Ranch from an old Carney guy. He was somebody who had a show where he had quite an amazing den of snakes, including a
it.
two-headed snake that was, I think, an albino Burmese, maybe.
Oh wow.
But he called it the Golden Girls because it was yellow and had two heads. But we were chatting. He was like, "You got to read this book." And it was the Skinwalker Ranch book. And so after we started talking, and the reason I bring it up is the person mentioned cryptids. And this guy actually told me in his hometown, he was on a date with a girl trying to make out with her. And all of a sudden, a Sasquatch just came right at him and
Wow.
ruined the moment. Like the Sasquatch was shaking the truck and everything. And then
Have some
allegedly he
decency.
encountered the
Come on.
Sasquatch in the woods again later. And but it was just so cool that people in such different walks of life are having experiences. That's one thing people will ask. Are there any people who are more attuned to it? And I think no, it's really just people being willing to see it.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely, there were people who are more imaginative. There are people who are more susceptible, but people of all walks in life, all walks of life, people of all professions and all intellectual abilities,
Mhm.
we all have the potential to see this stuff. There's no specific demographic or class for it.
Right. Right. Um, Dave from Spaced Out Radio said Chernobyl. Chernobyl. Oh, there you go, guys. Take a drink. Chernobyl for me.
I
That
just
would
want
be
to.
an interesting one too to go investigate.
I want to go there for the Chernobyl dogs. Get Luke a friend.
Chernobyl. What are the Chernobyl dogs? I don't know about these.
After everybody was evacuated from the area,
Mhm.
and all the dogs that had been former pets became strays and bred with one another. And so now there are hundreds and hundreds of half feral dogs, and the military base there will feed them, and
Yeah.
the Chernobyl tourist will take pictures with them, and they just look like they're having a grand old time.
Wow. Well, it's become a dog town, I guess.
It really,
Wow.
they get,
So, but there no like they didn't have any effects from the radiation or anything.
I mean, they die quicker than regular dogs, but they
Mhm.
also have a lifespan that is about equitable with a regular stray.
Hmm.
So they're doing
Interesting.
okay.
Oh wow.
I mean, they do, all get cancer and die,
Yeah.
but
Right.
as
Yeah. Not
far
not
as
great.
A radiation dog goes, it looks like they're having fun.
Well, good. At least if their life is short, at least they're having fun while they're living it.
Like, was that like a pirate saying, a short life but a merry one or something?
Oh, I love Bomber said, "Hey, Lynn and Dr. Guest." That's awesome.
That's fun.
So I saw somebody had said something about, possibly having a portal. I don't know if they meant in their house or whatever. So when you go and do investigations, or people come up to you and say, I think I might have a ghost in my house, what do you recommend that they do?
The very first thing I recommend doing is to try to communicate with it. Just talk to it and take a recording. You might feel very silly talking into thin air, but sometimes when you play the recording back, you will actually hear incredible answers coming back. And even more than that, if you attempt a dialogue with it, that shows your intent isn't anything bad. And if it is a conscious thing, it'll likely try to respond back to you. If it's one of the just trapped energy things, you can realize that pretty easy and move on with your life. Also, an easier and I guess less scary track is do your research. Go to the library, talk to the historical society, talk to the neighbors, find out who lived there, talk about who died there. Once you can piece together the history of the property, a lot of times it just kind of calms down. It just wants to be recognized. So your two tracks first are do your research and then try to communicate. And then you take it from there.
Now, some people say, I've heard some other paranormal investigators say that that's absolutely what you like, the opposite of what you should do, that if you start to interact with it or do any type of investigating, that you could cause the activity to ramp up. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I like it to ramp up. So
right, yeah, me too.
I would say that I really do say that it does tend to go away more once you acknowledge it, though. You have to work through it sometimes. It's just, you can compare it to, therapy. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You have to work with the spirits.
Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. Okay, so Helena says, what if you know who it is and he needs to cross over and go? I know who it is. I'm assuming she meant LOL. So what if somebody wants to get rid of a ghost? What advice would you give them?
I would recommend talk to whoever it is of your faith who has that authority to do it. I mean, I personally feel that anybody can do an exorcism if they want to. Anybody can make a ghost move on, but a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that themselves. So I'd say, if you're a Catholic, go to your priest. If you're a witch, go to a respected elder who knows their stuff. If you're a more hands-on kind of person, read the books and make it go on your own. Basically, it's your power or the authority's power over the spirit. Personally, I just like to document them, but I'm not above asking them to move on if that's the thing.
Okay, so that actually leads me to another question that I have. And Sinfinity Lizard, I am going to get to your question about the spirit animals and totems, because I think that's an interesting one. But have you ever tried to make a ghost leave? And if so, was it successful?
I don't personally get involved with making them leave. I actually witnessed an exorcism that went very poorly, and the priest ended up weeping.
Oh, no.
He did not do his job. Like, I'll ask him to go, but it's kind of on them. I'm just here to document it.
So let me go back to, so Sinfinity Lizard had the question, how do you feel about spirit animals and totems?
I feel good about them. I mean, simple as that. I think that's the sort of thing that if that sort of energy works for you, if there's a particular animal you identify with, if you can find power in that, if you feel like you're being guided by it, absolutely go with it. I joke, look at me, my spirit animal is the cane toad.
That's awesome.
I can get on board with the spirit animals. I don't necessarily think it would be the same thing as ghostly energy. If anything, it would be more like an entity, more like a spirit. This could go down the interdimensional rabbit hole if we really wanted to.
Mm,
But a lot of the spirit animal stuff is you actualizing yourself based on the idea of the animal,
yes,
at
I
least
agree.
in my opinion.
I
But
agree.
I'd say
My,
if the spirit animal stuff feels good, absolutely do it. It's a nice thought. In
yeah.
fact, I do remember something I read once. It was in whatever that free New Age publication they give out just to advertise all their phony potions and stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a column about spirit animals, and almost
Mm,
every month it was the same. It was like the wolf, the bear, the
yeah.
tiger in the jungle. And then somebody wrote one about the earthworm.
Oh, I
And
love
I
it.
thought that was the coolest thing ever because
Yes.
they talked about just all of the special properties of the earthworm and how resilient it is and how it's down in the darkness, but without it, nothing would be able to grow.
Mhm.
And I really liked that. I thought that that got me thinking about spirit animals in a very positive way. It was
Yeah.
the earthworm thing that got me going on that.
I love that. I love that. Mine is the scorpion.
Ooh, all right. How'd you land on that?
Well, it landed on me actually. When I was a teenager, I was in Florida in my mom's house and I was talking on the phone. I was just kind of flopped on the bed as teenagers do with my arm like hanging off the side. And I felt something in my hand and I wasn't looking and I went like, ugh, like in a reaction. And then I hear like a against the wall. So I was like, oh, that's not good. Um, so I called my brother. I went over to look first and it was a little scorpion that had been crawling in my hand. And so I got my brother. I was like, you've got to take care of this. But ever since then, I've kind of like felt the scorpion connection.
That's got to be a big one if it made a smack when it hit the wall.
Well, it was, it was probably like that big.
That's big enough.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
big
yeah, for
enough.
sure. Yes, definitely. All right. So I wanted to get to this. D. McKenna said, would Native American artifacts on the property have something to do with possible portal issues?
I wouldn't say that they would have anything to do with portal issues. I would say that
Mhm.
sacred sites may be portals. Um, I think it really depends on the respect the artifacts are given. I think having the artifacts of indigenous people, that's a sticky area. Unless you really treat them with proper respect, you don't want to have them in your collection necessarily. Um, and I do think that certain sacred land can be a portal,
Mhm.
but it's more about, once again, it all goes back to the intent. It's not a thing that just comes with every old arrowhead.
Oh, she said lots of negatives coming out of this portal every night. Not fun.
Where is this?
Right. I don't know if is this in your house? It's interesting.
I want to know
It's
who they're feeling, what kind of energy's
like
coming
what kind
up.
of yeah, what kind of negatives? All right. Dima,
Are
kind of tell us more so we can help.
are they on native property?
I don't know. I think she said that they have artifacts.
Ooh,
Um, so that might in the house. I'm
okay.
sorry, I'm scrolling up to see if I missed anything. So I'm assuming she has the portal in the house. Yeah.
I'd want to
Well, I
know.
mean,
I want to know
yeah,
what kind of artifacts they are.
right. And what kind of negatives?
And has she talked to any of the particular tribal people about them?
That's a good
Because
question.
that's always an interesting issue. If if the artifacts were acquired properly, that's one thing. But if they were pillaged, you might want to return them to the tribe.
So she says yes. So does that, D. McKenna, are you saying yes, you have talked to the native people that are around you, the native tribe? I'm not sure. But yeah, and I still want to know what those negatives are coming out of the portal. Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, if we can't get to all of it, if you want to scroll up, my email's up there. You can email me and I can help you out with that a little
Yeah,
bit.
that would be cool. I'd be interested to see
Yeah.
where it is. I
Yeah.
mean, that's part of why all the shrunken heads are being repatriated to the countries who made them,
Hmm.
because of the potential spiritual significance of the ancestors to the people who made the heads.
Yeah.
Personally, though, if anybody has a shrunken head they want to get rid of, I would be more than happy to take it off their hands.
You'll take the shrunken heads. I'll take the dolls. We'll
That,
be
but
helping out people doing a
that's
service.
that is something which I have seen more of as the oddities kind of collectibles become popular. It's
Yeah.
for the past couple of years been a big trend to have human bones in the house. And I mean, I've always thought that was fun. And a lot of people who do spirit work believe that having bones are good tools to help work the spirits through. But there's a lot of people who just buy them because they look cool. And yeah, I've been guilty of that too, for sure. But they don't quite realize they might be getting the spirits with them.
Yes, which is why I don't use human bones.
I actually feel way more comfortable with human bones in the collection than animal bones.
Oh, really? So you have tons of animal
Yes.
bones.
I was given, a good friend of mine gave me what is probably a deer skull, and I feel a little sad about the deer skull, but then on the same shelf, there's like 3 human heads, and I'm totally fine with
Totally
that.
fine with the human heads. Hi, Sadie. Oh, okay. So Dee McKenna, she's responding. What's happening? Shadow people.
Shadow people.
Spiders. Shadow spiders crawling on the ceiling. Oh.
Yeah, that's a thing that, yes, the shadow people are not good, and they're not spirits. You and I don't become shadow people when we die. It's not even an issue of like if we sell our soul or whatever. Shadow people are 100% entities. They're not good.
Right.
First thing, when people start talking about shadow people, first thing I recommend is to do a complete mental health assessment. I know that sounds hard, but make sure that you are mentally in a good place and it's not coming from within you. And then if you do have clear mental health and it's not coming from an interior source, then you got to get to work and you want to make them leave.
Yes. Now, how would you get a shadow person to leave?
Same as with the ghost. You just work with it and you make it go. My very first apartment I moved into in Salem, I had 2 roommates, and I had never met them before I moved in. One of them was the nicest guy in the world. The other was kind of a jerk. And I started noticing weird things around the house. I started seeing out of the corner of my eye, we saw these sort of shadowy figures and just like she was saying, like shadows that shouldn't be moving start sort of around the periphery creeping about. And I asked the guy who was sort of my friend, I'm like, are you and name redacted up to anything?
Yeah.
And it turned out they were both doing voodoo. I don't know how well schooled they'd been in it, but they were both from Haiti originally, and they'd both been working with various rituals. I don't think they'd necessarily intended to bring up the shadow people, but we had them in the house for a while, and basically we just really focused and told them to get lost.
Oh, that's good.
And that's about
okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm always curious. So I've had that as well. In my other house, the one that I moved out of, I would see shadows out of the corner of my eye, just like you described. You know, it was kind of like, and they were usually very fleeting.
Yep.
Now I don't like. Are those considered shadow people? I always think of that very like 3-dimensional, just black person figure as a shadow person.
Like the full inky blackness sucking all the light into it.
Yes, that's what I always think of.
That's like a more dramatic, more serious shadow person, but I do believe they're on the same spectrum.
Okay. So you don't think that would just be a spirit, like that you're just viewing in that kind of shadowy form? No.
Nope.
Okay.
No. I think if it has that black color to it, that would not be a spirit. If it has that deep blackness, which is so weird that people associate that with something so negative, but in the case of shadow people, it kind of is.
Yeah. Interesting.
One of the scariest things that ever happened in my life was I saw the shadow spider kind of thing that she mentioned. I was asleep, just starting to wake up, and doing what I do. I know all about sleep paralysis. And if you see anything while you're in bed, you got to make sure you can move. Otherwise, it's sleep paralysis. But I just saw it basically through my hand and over it and up on the wall just a little bit. And thankfully that was gone quickly, but I freaked out. That was one time I was actually really disturbed by what I was doing, and I had to sort of step back and think, am I losing my mind? Should I stop dealing with spirits and stuff? Yeah, the shadow spider was terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, you know what always creeps
And
me
I
out
love
too?
spiders.
Do you? Ooh, they don't. But which is funny. Like I always say my spirit animal is a scorpion, but spiders. Ugh. Um, but the ones that always creep me out are when I've heard stories of people seeing a shadow person like get up on a ceiling or crawl like kind of like backwards, like or just like
Like
ugh.
the Exorcist thing.
Yes. I've heard them like described. I think it's in one of the like the big ones like Penhurst or
Hmm.
they have one that does that. Ugh.
Hmm.
It just creeps me out.
Well, that's a thing we have to really watch out for too. Is we see paranormal trends. A lot of times, the filmmakers and the special effects artists they will base what they put in their movies on things they've really seen or really felt or had done their research. But then, when the image gets out into popular consciousness, other people start seeing the same thing. Maybe they have a real experience, but they put it through their mental filter of what they've seen on the screen. So
Yeah.
when we talk to people who are having experiences, we also have to see what media they've been consuming. We
Mm.
want to make sure that they're not being influenced by what they've seen on TV, what they've been reading, and there's no real correlation between any kind of media consumption and people having experiences,
Mhm.
but it's all the interpretation of the experiences. It's a cultural language for what people are seeing.
Yeah. Joey wants to know what's Penhurst. Oh,
Oh boy.
paranormal playground. It's an old asylum that the patients. You might see a cat walk by. I apologize.
Oh, orange cats are the best cats.
Yes, he's a funny little one. So yeah, it's an old asylum, which and I worked in psychology. That's actually what my degree is in, and so I understand that back then those places were usually just full, and they didn't have enough people, and they didn't have great treatments. They were doing what they thought was right at the time, but there was a lot of neglect, and some of the treatments were just torture, really. So it has a lot of kind of agonizing energy to it, I think.
Have you been there?
I have not. And it's in I think it's in Pennsylvania, right? He's
Yeah, I
asking
haven't
where it is.
I haven't been there either, but I want to
Yeah,
go. That's
I
on
do
the
too.
list.
All right, let's plan a trip. We'll go.
Now, do you know, is it abandoned, or is it like
It's
Eastern
owned.
State where they do tours through it and that kind
Yes.
of
I
okay.
think I actually got a notification today that they have like their paranormal investigation like tickets. So I don't know if they do group investigations were on sale. So
I
there's
miss when the old Salem jail was abandoned, and if
mm,
you knew the right person in the city, you could get permission to go in, and if you didn't, you could, sneak around.
yes.
You know what's in there now?
What?
Expensive condos and a fun little bar. In the jail that was so bad, the prisoners sued the state of Massachusetts and won the case and had it
Wow.
closed down.
Oh my gosh. Is this
Which,
the bar that has the games in it?
yes,
Oh, okay.
even in the 1990s, some of the people who were incarcerated there were in such bad conditions they didn't even have toilets in their cells. They
Ugh.
had buckets.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, and there's stories of because the old Salem jail was directly adjacent to the Howard Street Cemetery. Sometimes when the prisoners would escape, they would hide in the cemetery in the caverns underneath the cemetery.
Oh my goodness. So I wanted to address this just really quick. This is the more you know. Shock therapy doesn't work. ECT or electroconvulsive therapy actually is a really effective therapy. It's just the way they did it back then. They didn't sedate the patients. And so, they were having these convulsions basically, and they would restrain them as best as they could, but they were, breaking bones. They were experiencing the pain of it. Not great. But the way they do ECT nowadays, and they do still do it, is you sedate the patient. So the body is completely sedated as well. It's not going to be flopping around. And they have gotten really good at how to do it. But for people who have tried all of the other medications for depression and none of them work, a lot of times they will go to ECT. And it's actually one of the most effective treatments with the least amount of side effects. You'll have some short-term memory loss afterwards. Most often you will regain it. And they're asleep during the entire process. They don't even know it, but it is actually a really, really effective treatment. So a lot of people have that bad association with it.
Should I trade in my Prozac for a shot kit?
I would.
Really? All right.
Yeah. Well, it has the least amount of side effects.
Sign me up.
A lot of medications have side effects. Mm-hmm. And I actually, like, when I first graduated, I worked for Harvard Med School doing psychiatric med research with a lot of the pharmaceutical companies. And so I know all of the side effects. I've seen them. And ECT has the least amount of any of them.
That's fascinating.
It's kind of like, Kimberly is right. I was just about to say this. It's literally like rewiring the brain. Yeah, it's like giving your brain kind of a jump like you would your car. So
I want to know more about the memory loss aspect of it. Is it just short term, but then it comes back? How does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Do you build new memories, or does it erase everything?
I think I don't think it erases it. And I think it's probably different for different people. But it, 2 seconds. I would think of it as kind of like a block, a temporary block. So they can't remember, say, what happened in the past couple of days or the past maybe week. I don't know exactly what time frame, and I'm assuming it depends on the person because everybody's different. But they usually regain it. So it's kind of like temporary amnesia.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I didn't have any idea they were still doing that.
Yes, they do. And like I said, it's a really effective treatment.
All right. Well, I'll put that on the list right after we do the investigation at the London hospital.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Right. It's unfortunate that it has such a bad rap, but yes, they do still do it.
It's like the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest destroyed that whole therapy then. Yes,
it did, for sure. So yeah, here I'm like, hey, it's not that bad. So Dee McKenna is saying, my wife saw the shadow man with a weird hat image in the woods behind our house in the daytime while hiking. On other occasions, shadowy figures with no heads darting behind trees. What a mind job. That does sound crazy.
Can they make an illustration of what they saw, perhaps?
I don't know that we would be able to. I mean, maybe they can email
send it to us or something. Because we have heard stories of the so-called Hat Man. That's something that people have been seeing. Sort of like the Flannel Man, almost like a Men in Black kind of character, not alien related, but just sort of on the periphery of our subconsciousness. The Hat Man does kind of come around. Some people see the Hat Man standing at the edge of their bed. The ones with no heads, I've got no idea on that. I've
weird. Never heard of that either. That's interesting.
That's new to me.
Yeah.
The shadowy Hat Man. That's got some precedent. The no head people, that's spooky. Like, I want to know, were they wearing, could you discern any clothing? Were they tall? Were they little people? What did they look like?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if you could give us more info, definitely would love to hear about it. Yeah, because I've never heard of that either.
And this is the same person who has the Native American artifacts, right?
Yeah, and then the portal in their house. It sounds like they've got all kinds of stuff going. They've got their own Skinwalker Ranch going on there.
I was just thinking.
Got any UFOs or?
Where do they live? Did they say a state?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All right. So if you want to give us any of that info, I'll keep an eye out.
We could take a trip this winter after the tour season.
I know, that would be awesome. Yes, I would. He doesn't remember. Oh, so Marie is talking. She said her husband had it and it worked really well for him, ECT. He doesn't remember some things from the 8 to 9 weeks when he was getting treatment. Yeah, little things here and there. Yeah, okay. But really, that's like, if that's your only side effect, that's not bad.
No, that's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Are we
I'm
getting
so
any more
curious.
information about the headless people?
I know, that's what I was just thinking of too. I was
I'm
like,
going to be thinking about
I
them
was
when I
gonna
try to
like
go to
ask you
bed
more
later.
questions, but I was just like, oh, the headless people. Um, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Okay, so let's do this. So if someone wants to do an investigation, say in their house, or they want to just start getting into paranormal investigation, what type of equipment would you recommend that they use?
I would recommend probably the easiest thing, and you can just buy one of these on Amazon, and you've seen them on all the ghost shows. Get the EMF detector,
Okay.
but make sure you learn how to use it. Because if you're new to this tool, any little electric thing will set it off. Anything will set it off. You have to be sure that you know what the proper settings are. You have to know if you're in a house with certain kinds of wiring, you have to make you have to make allowances for the wiring and then see how it goes off. You have to do tests and make sure you get base readings on it, and you have to learn about how to interpret between spirit type energy and just regular household electricity. Even your cell phones will set it off.
Yeah.
But the EMF detector, as far as scientific equipment, that is something that definitely every ghost hunter should have in their kit. I also, for EVP, uh, you can use even just the voice recorder on your phone. I like to use analog tape. Just go buy the best quality little tape recorder you can and make sure you're using new tapes. Never record over tapes of your EVP sessions. Even if you think you captured nothing, even the smallest little glitch could come through and sound like something later. The one I don't like is the ghost box that just scans through random channels and
Yeah.
puts stuff together. That's people hearing stuff and interpreting. It's like the old Mad Magazine joke about channel surfing roulette, where one program says one thing and the next program says another thing, and you stitch together a narrative. It's the ghost box is crap.
Yeah.
You want to actually get recordings of them speaking. Definitely, energy can come through televisions and radios. I find it comes through better back before the digital age, but you don't want to do the ghost box.
Interesting.
Also, there's a book I really like. It's old, so the science in it is not good, but it's called Confessions of a Ghost Hunter. It was by a guy named Harry Price, and he was an old-fashioned Englishman, like one of those gentleman ghost hunters.
Oh,
And it
nice.
really gets you in the mindset of just you have to be patient. You just have to wait it out. You don't want to do any of the science he uses because it's all about stuffing your cameras with flash powder and like silly Scooby-Doo type stuff. But it is a good book that really will talk about how you want to use the scientific method. And also there's fun stories about things that he saw or claimed he saw. But that one is a good book. Expand your knowledge. Read as much stuff as you can about it, and also read the skeptical articles. I like to read stuff from people who are not believers. I like to read things from people who are scientists who say it's all totally bunk, because you can see their reasoning behind it, and you can apply that to your own interpretation of it. And I'm pretty skeptical, but if you're too skeptical, it's almost as bad as being too much of a believer.
Yeah.
You got to walk right between that. If you're a regular skeptic, that's how you should be. If you're a fanatical skeptic, that's the worst thing you can be.
Right. Yeah. If you're just a debunker, then you're
Right.
not open to any of it.
But then again, if you're just a bunker, that's just as bad.
True. Yeah. You neither want to bunk nor debunk.
Right. You look for the truth. No bunks wanted.
So D. McKenna says he's in spooky Vermont. Or she, I'm not sure.
That is close enough.
It is close to us. We're in Massachusetts. So
I think we could probably head up there sometime.
Yeah. If they're interested, I think that would be really interesting to do that. Well, we are getting down to the end. I think we have kept talking longer than I meant us to.
I'm seriously sleepy, but I could go on forever.
Well, I do tend to I probably will stay on a little bit after we end it and just chat with whoever is left. So you're more than welcome to stay with us. But for now, let me get into the weird and wacky today in history, because there's some interesting things that happened. So just a reminder for those of you that are the, Rye, you smooth talker. So we are on the East Coast, so it is May 16th here. All right, we're getting near the end tonight on Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Lynn Wallington, sitting on my broomstick in the SOR Witch Quarters. But before we go, it's time for some wacky history. And I want to remind you that if you've missed out most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/spacedoutradio. Just do us the favor and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot. And don't forget to read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. All right, speaking of the news, let's get into the weird and wacky, or things that are simply just interesting today in history. So May 16th, in 1866, root beer was invented by Charles Elmer Hires in Philadelphia, PA. Did not know that. In 1914, this one's exciting, the American Horseshoe Pitchers Association, that's the AHPA, was formed in Kansas City, Kansas. I have no idea what that is, but great for them. 1946, you might like this one, Mike. Oh, no, not for you. Thank you.
Is that ghost rapping? Is it the Fox Sisters?
It's Lulu. The first magnetic tape recorder was demonstrated by Jack Mullen. So that's
interesting.
Yes. In 1963, I like this one. After 22 Earth orbits, Gordon Cooper returned to Earth, ending Project Mercury. Yes. And did you know that while there was a show, Gordon Cooper, while he was up there orbiting, was looking for treasure in the ocean? Yeah. In 1964, Motown Records got its first #1 hit with My Guy by Mary Wells. I remember that song. Was not alive in 1964, but I do know the song. This one is fantastic. In 1965, SpaghettiOs were sold for the first time.
And those same cans are still on the shelf today.
Yeah, right. And they were delicious as a kid. Do you remember the ones that had the meatballs or the hot dogs?
Oh, yeah.
That was like gourmet.
I just tried the cotton candy flavored Twinkies last week, and those were so good.
Were they?
So good, yes.
I'll have to check that out. In 1969, Venus 5, a Russian spacecraft, landed on the planet Venus. Hello, Venus. In 1983, Michael Jackson performed his moonwalk dance for the first time on television. There's a lot of space-related things, including the moonwalk. In 1988, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that police do not have to have a search warrant for discarded garbage. Go at it. 1996, 12 million people tuned in for the series finale of Murder, She Wrote on CBS. And in 1998, the Unsolved Mysteries true crime series ended. Now, what can you celebrate on May 16th? Well, let me tell you. May 16th is Biographer's Day. If you're a biographer, happy Biographer's Day. It is also one of my favorites, International Pickle Day. Delicious. It's Love a Tree Day, Mimosa Day. So when you wake up in the morning, have yourself a mimosa. Piercing Day, if that's you, you do you. Sea Monkey Day, yes, thank you so much. Nickel Day, very boring. Wear Purple for Peace Day, all right. And World Baking Day. If any of you would like to bake for World Baking Day and send it my way, I will be very happy to take it. So, a lot of stuff going on today on May 16th.
Well, I like the sea monkey idea.
I do too. National Sea Monkey Day. I didn't even know that was a thing. It's amazing. So, well, thank you so much, Mike, for being on here with us. You've been wonderful. Like I said, if you want to stay on for a few more minutes, you're more than welcome to do so.
I do think I need to turn in because I have a full day of tours. But yes. I enjoyed chatting. I think this was fun. Your listeners are great, and we ought to do it again sometime.
Definitely. All right. Well, let me extra us out. Oh, hold on 2 seconds. Oops. We've got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Women Rule the World. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. So come on, my little demons, and dance it up for the guitar god himself. A special thanks to everyone listening in at home, in your cars, with your coven, wherever you may be. Thanks to everyone participating in our chat rooms on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Remember, this show is copyrighted by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for sharing your evening with us. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need you to send us off into the night. And even though the broomstick may have landed for the night, remember there's always a seat for you on the next flight. Good night, and go make some mischief, my friends. The perfect girl will crawl for miles through the sand to win your hand and be your man. I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will start till I reach the top just to be there with you. With you. And I'll still trip over my feet. And my heart still skips a beat. I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Yeah, the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Oh, the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Oh, no, we don't need to start that again. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. You were awesome. I definitely would love to have you on again. It seems like everybody's enjoying the conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad they enjoyed it too.
I don't know if you've been. Oh my goodness, my dogs at the end of the show just like to have a say. But yeah, everybody seems to enjoying it, and they love everything you're talking about.
Shall I tell them where they can get ghost tour tickets?
Absolutely, please do.
Spellboundtours.com. If you go to spellboundtours.com, that's our official website. That's where you can get tickets for the best paranormal themed history ghost tour in Salem. Yep. Also, you can pick them up in the shop called the Magic Parlor. It's at 213 Essex Street. You can buy them there day of the tour. It's a great shop, although I do also recommend you get the tickets in advance because sometimes we sell out. Also, if you've got ghostly photographs, we have a contact link on the Spellbound website. We'd be happy to take a look at them. Sometimes it takes a while for us to get back to you, but we'll eventually get back to you. And I want to see your ghost pictures, and I want to see you in Salem. So come take a tour, and I'll be happy to be back on the show in the future.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You've been amazing as always. Such a great guest. And always fun to talk to. I'm lucky. I get to see Mike all the time.
Well, you're in the Spellbound organization now.
That is true. I am training to be a tour guide with Mike. So
I think it's going to work out very well.
Well, that's
unless
generous.
You make Giles Corey mad. If you make Giles Corey mad, we'll have trouble.
Right? Yeah. I'll be nice. Nice-ish to Giles Corey. You know.
I'll give him what he deserves, but don't get cursed.
No. No worries there. Yes. So Angel says yes. Tickets when I finally make it back to the East Coast. I want to go see these places. Definitely come. You can come see us with Spellbound Tours. But everybody's loving your mustache too. Just by the way.
Well, thank you very much. Do you want me to tell them the secret to it?
Please.
Don't use wax. Wax will get all twizzly and twirly. What you want to use is a stuff called Layrite hair cement. That's the stuff the rockabilly guys use for their big pompadours. My hair is too coarse for that, but it's perfect for the mustache. This hold, unless I mess with it, it'll stay in all day, and I can also wash it right out with water.
Wow.
Layrite hair cement. They don't pay me to say that, but it's the only thing that actually works.
Wow. Well, with a name like hair cement, it should.
It's good stuff.
Wow. That is amazing. Good to know. Well, next time I grow out my mustache, I will be twirling it up with.
Well, if you become a bearded lady, I could probably get your job at the freak show.
That's true. You're hooked up. Awesome. Rockabilly hair cement. Got it. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I've always wondered how they it's like windproof. It's dance proof. Like, how do they do that? Now I know.
Layrite hair cement, and also good old Murray's when it grows out a little longer. That's the hard stuff.
Oh, is that like another like hair pomade cement?
Yeah, that's like an old fashioned thing. It's mostly petroleum jelly. Yeah, that stuff won't wash out.
No, I can't
This stuff
imagine that.
washes out, but in a few
Yeah.
months when my hair grows all back in, if you see it good and greasy, that's going to be the Murray's.
Oh, all
The
right.
Murray's
Wow.
is basically waterproof.
I would think so.
Nothing gets through the Murray's.
Yes. Kimberly says in the 80s it was lots of hair pomade and some hairspray. For me, it was lots of hairspray. Aquanet, man.
Aquanet, no doubt, right?
Clouds of Aquanet. Yep, absolutely. You got to get those bangs up. Like,
That's why the ozone hole has shrunk. Is now that
yeah,
nobody's using it
nobody's using
anymore.
Aquanet. They still sell it. I've seen it, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's so funny. Well, now we know all of the hair secrets.
All the
These are Salem hair secrets just for you guys tonight.
Should we plug the salons in Salem?
No.
That's just a fun thing for your listeners to know, is that Salem is so witchy. There's even like witch themed hair salons here. That's how deep it goes in Salem.
Everything is witch themed. Everything. Yeah, it's pretty. One of my cats is yelling now.
Well, yeah, I'm hearing
Like they
Luke's
sense the end of
door.
the show.
So I'm going to go for the night, but thank you for
Right.
chatting and have a
Thank
wonderful evening, morning, whatever this is to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Get some rest. Have great tours tomorrow, as I'm sure you will. And we appreciate you being on here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to go curl up with Luke.
Okay. Have a great night.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Well, sounds like, what's your favorite witch movie? Practical Magic. I gotta love it. It's funny. Most witches that I know either like Practical Magic or Hocus Pocus, but I don't really know anybody that likes both. I'm like, Hocus Pocus is okay, but it's kind of like a little bit lame. So yeah, Practical Magic. It's one I watch every October. Well, Mike was a great guest. Oh, thank you, Vinny. He's an interesting guy. He's lived quite the life, and he has quite the collection. We didn't get a chance to really talk about it, but he has quite the collection of, yes, Practical Magic and The Craft. Those are both great. Of like weird, he just has a lot of weird collections, like medical oddities, I guess you could say. And Witches of Eastwick was great too. Yes, absolutely. I was so bummed when they didn't continue doing that. Sorry, I'm in like two different directions, but light as a feather, stiff as a board. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. There are a lot of really good witch movies. And then we cannot forget. I say we can't forget, and I'm forgetting the name. Oh my gosh, the one with the three sisters. It was a TV show. What was it? With Piper. Paige came in, and oh my gosh, it's too late for me. Bell, Book, and Candle. Yes, that's the Good Witch, right? Bell, Book, and Candle. Charmed. Thank you, Dave Hurley. Thank you, Kimberly. Yes, Charmed. My daughter's named Piper. I should remember that. Have you ever tried Light as a Feather? Yes, I have tried it, and it is crazy. Yes, thank you guys, Charmed. Can't believe I forgot Charmed. I'm not as crazy about the newest rendition of it. Like, I watched it a little bit, but it's not the old one. I don't think they're trying to be, but it's just not as good. All right, guys. Well, if you guys have any other questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, I will probably sign off fairly well. I got it first. Good job. Don't like the new one much. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either, Kimberly. Are you on until midnight, 3 a.m. East Coast? No, I'm just doing 2 hours for now. Good night, Kimberly. Are you saying good night, or are you? Vinny, do I have any tattoos? Yep, I have. I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Thank you, Angels Are Life. Any opinions on the existence of doppelgangers? I mean, I've certainly seen people that look like other people. And in fact, I had, good night, Kimberly. When I was in, I want to say it was it was like a freshman in high school. there was another girl who looked exactly like me, so much so that our friends would get us confused. They would think I was her and that she was me. So that was a little weird. I don't know that there's anything more to it, but she and I looked exactly alike. It was pretty crazy. Thank you, Susan. Good night, Fast Hemi Machinist. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep up with you. So I don't know if that answers your question about doppelgangers, but night, Sadie. Me and my ugly sleep. Good night. Good night. And Dee McKenna, if you want us to come out to Vermont, let us know. Because Mike does travel for paranormal investigations. Too pretty to be a bad witch. I'm not bad. Seeing tattoos that are protection symbols across someone else's back or shoulders. I mean, I certainly know a lot of people have protection symbols as tattoos, not necessarily on the back and shoulders. I don't think. I don't think that it has to necessarily be there unless there's a specific reason why they put it there. But yeah, I know a lot of people have. I have, it's not a protection symbol, but I do have a sigil, which is a magical symbol. Where is it? Tattooed on my finger here. Thanks, Linda. Good night. Good night, Stu. Oh, thanks so much, Jim. Or of each other. Okay, hold on a second. I think I missed something, Kimberly. Okay, just heard that one last thing on doppelgangers. My idea is that they are members of your soul family, literally a piece of you. Oh, that's interesting. Is your friend a hot witch too? I don't know. I don't know her anymore. But thanks for thinking that I am. Green nail polish. Like, oh, thanks, Vinny. Thanks for noticing. I like it too. It's on my toes as well. Keep seeing a chap around my town who is a carbon copy nearly of a friend who passed away 3 years ago, even down to the, oh, wow. That would be a little crazy, Joey. I can't imagine that. Goodness. And once got beat up and I got beat up once mistaken for her? Oh, gosh. That's not a great person to look like then, I guess. Hashtag hot witch. You guys are funny. Oh, goodness. All right, guys. Well, I think I am going to call it a night too. It is pretty late here, but we'll, Dave was saying that I'll get to the point where I want to do 3 hours. He's probably right, because I could definitely keep on talking, but good night, Jenny. Thank you so much. Mama D is the hottest witch. Who's Mama D? I'll have to check her out. Organ recipients will take on traits of the organ donor. I have heard that too, Denali. I know nothing about witchcraft. Do you recommend a starting point? Yes. Scott Cunningham books are great. He's older. Well, he's passed away. His books are older, but amazing. And most of the witches I know still have and use Scott Cunningham's books. He has a book, what is it called? It's like Guide for the Solitary Witch or something along those lines. Is amazing. So that's a lot of really good information. He'll give you the basics, and then he'll even go up to advanced witchcraft. That should be on every mic, don't. Thank you, Joey. So that would be a great starting point. There are some good people on YouTube that you can watch. I definitely don't recommend TikTok, but that's just me. Symbol represents the splitting of two hairs. Ryan G. Which symbol are you talking about? The one on my finger, or are you guys talking about a different one that I just missed? Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. Oh, you guys are awesome. All right, guys. Well, I am going to call it a night. Thank you so much. Vinny's heart. Amazing. That's hilarious. Actually, I don't know if you watch my paranormal channel or my YouTube channel with Caitlin, who's going to be on next week, by the way. She's hilarious. You guys will love her. The Italian sausage is mentioned in our video that's coming out this week. Oh, Denali Princess, thank you so much. Is mistaken a witch worm's mistaken? Night Marie, how do I contact tonight's guest? Oh, if you go on to Spellbound, I think it's just spellboundtours.com. If you just Google Spellbound Tours Salem, his email is on there. Sometimes it might take him a couple of days to get back to you, but he definitely will. Especially just tell him that you were the person with the portal that was talking to him tonight. He'll definitely get back because he does travel. It'll probably be after the tour season, I would imagine, because it's starting to get really crazy. Like tonight or today, I went to pick up my daughter who works in Salem, and it was crazy. Like it was October already. Good night, Rye. I gave you an extension on that last one, but it's coming due. Can you post her YouTube channel, please? Oh, my YouTube channel? Is that what you were asking? Let's see, I might be able to post the link for you guys. Hold on a second. Because of the name, because it has the word paranormal in it, every paranormal video comes up when you search it. But the name is so great. Paranormal spirits. I mean, I came up with it, but you know, I still think it's great. Because we drink. That's why it's called Paranormal Spirits. But if you do, why is this? Oh, here we go. Channel. Here we go. Good night, Kira. Is it not going to let me? Hold on a second. All right, there you go, guys. That's the link for the YouTube channel. If hopefully that'll work for you. 3% can bench twice her body. I don't know about that, but I'm glad that you think I look that way. That I can bench twice my body weight. That's hilarious. I'm sure Dave Hurley could chime in on that and say that that is absolutely not true. I don't know whether he's paying attention anymore. Oh, thank you, Andrew. Gnomes Trucking Express. So I have a computer. Yes, I have a computer, Vinny, if you were asking me. I'm on my computer, yes. Oh, thank you, Vinny. Well, hopefully you like it. We'll see what you think once you've gotten into it. But based on you and Rye, I think you'll enjoy it. Yes, your finger, 2 dimensions. Oh, the tattoo on my finger is actually, and don't be frightened, it's actually the sigil to invoke the angel Lucifer. Found it, Lynn. Oh, yay, Marybon. You're prettier than Dave, in fairness. That's hilarious. So, yeah, so it's a Luciferian symbol, but not satanic. I always have to he's stealing Lynn from me. Oh, hey, there's plenty of me to go around, guys. Don't you worry. Yeah, so that's what it is. It's a Luciferian symbol. And you also see you in the astral. You guys are funny. Curious and nosy, why Lucifer? Well, I just happen to work with Lucifer. The angel Lucifer is satanic. Witches are different. We kind of talked about this a little bit, I think, last week. Or I definitely went into it a lot of detail last year when Dave interviewed me about witchcraft, and we specifically talked about Luciferian. But a Luciferian is basically, since Lucifer was the bringer of light, a Luciferian is someone who just researches and learns and tries to elevate themselves by learning and kind of enlightening themselves. That's all Luciferian really means. Not every Luciferian works with Lucifer, but I do. Oh, thank you, Slim Tinskin. So yeah, Lucifer is our friend. He tried to help us out. He did. That's right. Thank you. And a little bit of trivia. I was in Old Catholic Seminary for a while because I was interested in, one, the history. I love history. I find anything history fascinating. Jesus is Lucifer. That is true, Vinny. It does say that. You're right. And nowhere in the Bible does it say that Lucifer is the devil. So it just says Lucifer fell from heaven. That's all. But somehow along the way, I think it was one of the popes. I did learn this at one point while I was in seminary. One of the popes made the connection that Lucifer was the devil, but it never says that in the Bible. Plus, the Bible was written by men. It wasn't written by the apostles. It was written by people that knew the apostles. So it's kind of like the game of telephone in my mind. Oh, no worries. Yeah, if you look it up, I think Angels Are Life. You should be able to find it, I think. Wow, you're crazy. Okay, cool. Project Blue Book, great show. Thank you. One person. Okay. You guys are funny. I know I keep saying that, but you're cracking me up. Thanks, Vinny. I like your style too, man. You drink adrenochrome? I don't know what that is. With all the satanic talk. It's not satanic talk. I was just saying satanic witches are different than Luciferian witches. But you do you, man. He goes by so many different names. Angels Are Life said, and that's true. Do you work with? Oh, all right. Okay, we know some of the same people. Angels Are Life. I have not, but I do know someone who has. I tend to work. It just depends, I guess, on Lynn for host. Give Dave a holiday. I like that, Vinny. Absolutely. Paimon I work with probably more than any of the others. But I haven't really worked with Belial. So interesting. Your mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work unless it's open. You got it. So, all right, guys. I know I said it before like 3 times, but I'm definitely going to hit the hay. Thank you guys so much for joining. I've got to find my dogs wherever they are. They've wandered off. But you guys have been awesome. Definitely tune in again next week if you can. Caitlin's a riot. I'm sure it'll be a blast. So when she and I get together, it's usually craziness. So if you watch any of our videos on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I definitely recommend, I think it was the one maybe 2 weeks ago. Hold on, let me tell you the name of it. The Devil and the Cross-Eyed Preacher. It's hilarious. So, and it is based on a true story that happened in Ipswich, Massachusetts in the 1700s. A preacher claimed to, or there's a story that this preacher wrestled the devil in front of the entire congregation. But the preacher was incredibly cross-eyed, and we have pictures of him. So it's kind of funny thinking that this guy, and we made it into this huge wrestling match. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we do know a lot of the same beings. Depends on what is necessary. Too tired to think. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We're on the nude tandem skydiving team together. That's hilarious. Oh, thank you so much, Cat Chaser, for the super sticker. Okay, Ryan G. You do you, man. Go to bed, you burn it. Thank you. Good morning. Yes, it is. It's 2:30 in the morning here. You'll be back in the main chair soon, being the hostess with the most. That's right. Don't even worry about it, Angels for Life. I'm not even bothered by it. All right, everybody. Well, have a great night, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for joining me. You guys were awesome, as always. Night, everyone.